The Curse of the Moroccan Voodoo Doll. I was never one for superstitions. I'd always thought people who believed in curses, spirits and ancient magic were a little crazy, but then again I had never been to Morocco before. The sun was setting over the rugged Atlantis Mountains as I walked through the winding streets of the vibrant capital, alive with the hum of people and the scent of spices. It was chaotic, but I loved it. It was everything I hoped for, exotic, new and full of adventure. I had been travelling for months, working my way through Europe, and Morocco seemed like the perfect next stop, a place with ancient mystique, vibrant markets and enough mystery to fill 1,000 stories. The locals had warned me, of course. I had heard whispers about the cursed places, the dark alleys where tourists should never venture, and the superstitions that clung to the city like the dust in the air. I'd laughed them off. I wasn't one of those people who took stock in old tales. I hoped to meet with other backpackers at a hostel just outside the city centre, but the map I brought from a street vendor was far from accurate. While searching for the place, I found myself in a quiet corner of the market I hadn't expected. A small stall stood at the end of the alley, its shelves lined with strange handcraft trinkets. Amongst them were a row of small, dark figures, voodoo dolls, their beady eyes fixed in a haunting stare. I could barely look at them, feeling a strange unease ripple. "Can I help you, young man?" a woman's voice snapped at me out of my daze. I turned around. She was older, her skin weathered by time, her eyes far older than her years. She looked at me, not with the curiosity of a seller, but with a quiet, knowing gaze that unsettled me more than the dolls. "You've come to the wrong place, young man," she said, calm, but laced with something that made the air thick. I chuckled, a little nervous. "I'm just looking for my backpackers' lodgings. I'm new here." She tilted her head, studying me silently. "You should leave this market," she continued. "There are things here that don't like strangers." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I thought she was talking about pickpocketers or troublemakers in the alley, but the way her eyes lingered on me made my skin prickle. "Yeah, right, sure," I said, leaving, eager to escape the awkward encounter. But as I walked away, I felt the weight of her gaze still on my back. The next few days were filled with the usual chaos of a tourist in a new city, visiting the markets, eating too much street food, getting lost in the winding streets, and hanging out with other travellers over a beer or two. But something had changed since that woman's warning. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The city felt scarier, as if every shadow held something waiting to pounce. And at night I couldn't help but hear whispers in the darkness, like voices beyond my reach. It all came to a head when I visited the old city, the area I'd first stumbled upon when I arrived. I'd heard stories from fellow travellers about a local curse, a legend passed down through generations. It was something about a curse on those who disrespected older traditions. I laughed it off, of course, but it was there, tucked in the corners of the marketplace, in the glances of the locals who saw my face, in the way the wind seemed to carry a warning. And then I found it, the thing I would regret ever touching. I saw a voodoo doll in a small shop in the market's back corner. It was simple, no larger than the palm of my hand, the dark, twisted figure with sharp pins sticking out from its ragged clothes. For some reason, it called to me. I couldn't explain it. The woman behind the counter grabbed it, holding it tightly to her chest, gesturing at me not to touch it. But for some reason, I pulled it out of her clutches and dropped a couple of notes on the counter and fled the shop. God only knows what possessed me to do this at that moment. The air shifted. The shopkeeper muttered something under her breath as I fled her store. The doll sat on my bed that night, its beady eyes staring at me as I tried to sleep, but the air in the room felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't name. I woke in the middle of the night, my heart racing, only to find the doll had moved. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was a dream, that I had moved it in my sleep. But the sensation didn't go away, and the whispers grew louder. The eye of the serpent. The next day felt like a blur, nothing more than a series of hazy images strung together by an unsettling sense of dread. I tried to shake off the strange feeling that had settled over me, that heavy, suffocating awareness that something was wrong. It was as if the city had turned against me. Its chaos was now closing in on me. I had gone out to find some food, still clutching the voodoo doll, though I wasn't sure why. It was compelling, pulling me deeper into the city's heart and urging me to find its secrets. The bustling markets seemed too loud and bright, and the once enticing smells now churned in my stomach. My heart pounded as I passed through the crowded streets, unease creeping along my spine. That's when I saw it. A snake lay coiled around a display of shiny, colourful beads in a shadowed corner. Its body was thin and serpentine, and its dark scales gleamed under the dim light of the alley. It was almost impossible to tell where its body ended and the shadows began. Its form blending with the darkness, saved for the unsettling golden hue of its eyes. I froze. I had always hated snakes. Who doesn't? But this one felt different. Its eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, like it knew exactly who I was and what I had in my possession. My throat tightened, and I felt an odd pull, like a magnetic force drawing me closer. My feet, almost against my will, slowly approached the creature. It didn't move, not at first, but I could feel the tension in the air, thick and oppressive, as though the world was holding its breath. And then, with a swift flick of its tongue, the snake uncoiled and slithered towards me. I instinctively stepped back, but its eyes didn't leave mine. "Go ahead, touch it," a voice murmured behind me. I turned sharply. The woman from the marketplace stood again, her eyes dark and knowing. "You have it now," she said, her voice soft but her words sharp as a blade. "The curse has already taken root." I shook my head, trying to brush off the sudden chill that ran through me. Curse? I laughed, but it came out weak, as if I didn't believe my own words. Her gaze shifted and she nodded towards the snake, still watching me with those glowing eyes. "The snake," she whispered. "It's a symbol. You are marked. It will follow you until the end." I stepped back again, my pulse quickening. "This is insane," I muttered, turning away from her. But my eyes were still drawn to the snake. It had curled around a nearby shrub, its body twisting and contorting unnaturally, almost like it was laughing at me. I tried to walk away, but something tugged at me, a sharp prang in my chest. I glanced over my shoulder. The snake had moved again, its sleek body now coiled around the crate I had just passed. Its eyes, those golden knowing eyes, were locked on mine, and for a brief moment I swore I saw something else flicker within them. Malice? I couldn't breathe. I forced my legs to move, ignoring the strange pull that the snake seemed to have on me. Later that night in my dimly lit room, I placed the voodoo doll on the nightstand. It sat there quietly. The room was still and silent. But when I glanced up from the brochure I was reading, I saw the snake, a dark shape in the corner of my vision. It was slithering across the floor, moving in and out of the shadows like it owned the place. My breath caught in my throat, and for a split second I thought I was imagining it. But no, there it was, honest and tangible. Its body withering slowly towards the bed, its golden eyes locked on mine. I scrambled backwards, my mind racing. How had it gotten in? Where had it come from? I hadn't heard any doors open. I couldn't take my eyes off it. I was trapped, pinned by its gaze, and I swore I saw something else there, far worse than malice. There was an understanding, a knowing, It wasn't just a snake. It was part of something far older and far darker. It slithered closer, inching towards the voodoo doll, and then, as if following some unspoken command, the snake paused beside the doll. I reached for the doll, hands trembling, but as my fingers brushed the teeny figure, the snake hissed, a sharp, chilling sound that echoed through the room. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing heavy, as if the room had come alive, wrapping me in a suffocating grip. I couldn't breathe. My head spun. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the snake was gone. But intense whispers started echoing through the room, scaring the crap out of me. Leave before it's too late. Covering my ears with my hands, I curled up on the bed, a sick feeling of dread gnawing deep within my stomach. Sleep eluded me for hours. The marked one. I warily climbed out of bed the following day. I knew I had to rid myself of the cursed doll. I chucked it in the laundry basket in the hallway and walked out into the morning sunlight, determined to never see it again. But when I returned hours later, there it was, sitting in the middle of my bed, its beady eyes mocking me. The following day I threw it into a dumpster. When I returned to the hotel, it was in my day pack, nestled between my clothes like it had always been there. Each attempt left me more shaken and more convinced that whatever it wasn't just a harmless souvenir. And the city seemed to turn colder and darker with every passing day. Locals avoided me on the street, their eyes darting away when they saw me. Some even crossed themselves or muttered a prayer as I walked by. I couldn't understand their words, but it certainly wasn't comforting. The weight of their whispers pressed down on me, suffocating as though the whole city had conspired to push me out. I felt like the marked one. That evening, unable to shake the growing unease, I called my best mate, Charlie. He was travelling down Spain to join me in a few days, and the familiar tone of his voice was a lifeline in a storm of madness. "Hey man," he said, his voice crackling slightly over the line. "How's Morocco?" "Not great," I admitted, pacing the small room. I've got this problem." "You sound like you've been through hell," he said, concern creeping into his tone. "What's going on?" I hesitated, unsure of how to explain. But Charlie had been my friend for years. If anyone would understand, it was him. So I had told him everything, the market, the doll, the snake, and the whispers. By the time I had finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Charlie spoke. "A voodoo doll? You're serious?" "Deadly serious," I said. "And I can't get rid of it. It keeps coming back. And the people here are acting like I'm cursed or something." "That's pretty insane," he said. "But listen, I'll be there next week. We'll figure this out together. Just hang in there, okay? Don't do anything stupid." "Yeah, okay," I said, though his reassurance felt hollow. "Thanks, Charlie." After the call ended, I sat on the end of the bed, the doll staring up at me from where it had somehow found its way onto the nightstand. I shoved it into the drawer, slammed it shut, and decided I needed fresh air. The hostel courtyard was nearly empty, saved for a girl leaning against the faded blue doorway. Her auburn hair caught the dim light, and she glanced up as I approached. Her eyes were sharp and almost too knowing. "Michael," she said, her voice low and steady. "Finally we meet." I froze. "Do I know you?" She smiled faintly, the corners of her mouth curling up like she was in on a secret I wasn't. "Not yet," she said, "but I've been watching you." Something about her tone sent a chill down my spine. "Why?" I asked, wary. "You stand out," she said, "and not just to me. The people here, they know, they sense it." "Sense what?" Her gaze drifted to my backpack, and momentarily I thought she would say something about the doll. Instead she said, "You should be careful, Michael. Some forces in this place don't kindly acknowledge outsiders meddling with things they don't understand." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, frustration bubbling up. "Who are you?" She tilted her head, studying me like a puzzle she was trying to solve. "Call me Anna," she said at last. "And let's just say I've seen what happens when people like you get in over their heads. You've been marked," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes flicked towards my backpack again. "The doll isn't just an object. It's a gateway, and now it's chosen you." I wanted to laugh, to brush it off as the ramblings of another superstitious local. But the way she looked at me, like she was staring past my skin and into my soul, made the words stick in my throat. "You need to get rid of it," she continued, her tone more urgent now. "And I don't mean toss it in a bin or leave it behind. You need to destroy it." "I've tried getting rid of it," I said, exasperated. "It keeps coming back." She shook her head. "You don't understand. That doll isn't just a thing you brought in a market. It's bound to you now. You can't just abandon it. You must sever the connection." "How?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Her gaze darkened. "There's a place, a shrine in the mountains. It's older than the city, older than the legends people tell around here. Take the doll there and you might have a chance to break free." "Might?" I echoed, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The curse isn't just on the doll, it's on you now. And there are others who know. They'll come for you if you wait too long." My stomach twisted. "Others? Like who?" Her eyes flickered to my backpack, then down to the ground, where the unmistakable shape of a snake slithered silently across the courtyard. My breath caught in my throat as its cold gaze locked with mine. It was the same snake from the market, the one in my room. It followed me everywhere, creeping through the shadows, always out of sight. She glanced up at me, her expression unreadable. "The snake," she whispered. "It is a symbol. You are marked. It will follow you until the end." The courtyard felt colder suddenly. The night pressed in around us. I glanced at my backpack, knowing the doll was inside, and felt the weight of her words settle over me like a shroud. "I'll be back early tomorrow, 6 a.m. Meet me here," she said, leaving with that. The Shrine of the Shadows. The morning air was cool and heavy with the scent of dew-soaked earth as we made our way towards the shrine. The previous day's events felt like a fevered dream, but the doll's weight in my backpack was a stark reminder that they had been all too real. Anna walked beside me, silent and focused. She hadn't said much since I'd agreed to come here, and the questions in my mind piled up like stones. What was this place? Why did the doll lead us here? And why did Anna seem to know so much about it? The shrine came into view, just as the sun broke over the horizon, perched high up on a jagged cliff, overlooking the sprawling dunes. It was a ruin, crumbled walls covered in creeping vines, its once majestic columns now fractured and leaning. The air around it was thick and stifling, and a metallic tang stuck to the back of my throat. Anna walked ahead of me, her steps confident as though she had trodden this path many times before. The doll's whispers had returned, louder now, hissing in a language I couldn't understand. "This place is older than the sands," Anna said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "It was built by those who understood the darkness. They worshipped it, bargained with it." She turned to look at me, her dark eyes catching the flickering light of the rising sun. "You'll need courage, Michael, more than you've ever known." I wanted to demand answers, to ask her why she was so invested in this and seemed to know so much about my curse, but my questions caught in my throat as I spotted it. The snake. It slithered out from the shadows of the shrine's entrance, its black scales glinting like wet diamonds. It was more prominent now, easily as thick as my arm, and its eyes burned with an unnatural golden glow. It stopped in the middle of the path, its head raised and swaying hypnotically, blocking our way forward. "It knows," Anna murmured. Her tone was cold, almost reverent. Knows what? I asked, my voice trembling. That you're here to sever the bond, she said, stepping closer to the snake, her movements slow and deliberate, and it won't let you do it without a fight. The snake let out a low, rumbling hiss that vibrated through the ground beneath my feet. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to run, but Anna didn't flinch. It's a test, she said, glancing back at me. You'll have to face it. What do you mean, face it? I asked, panic creeping into my voice. Not everything is as it seems, she said cryptically. Trust your instincts. The shrine has its own rules. Before I could respond, the snake lunged. I stumbled backwards, narrowly avoiding its fangs, and fell hard onto the stony path. The doll in my backpack seemed to grow heavier, dragging me down, and I swore I could hear its mocking laughter in my ears. Anna didn't move to help me. She stood still, watching, her expression unreadable. Why aren't you doing anything? I shouted, scrambling to my feet. This is your fight, she said. The snake coiled around itself, its body forming a sinister spiral, its head swaying as though it was sizing me up. And then, to my horror, it spoke, not with words, but with a voice that slithered directly into my mind. You think you can break the curse, it hissed. You are nothing but a pawn. The doll is mine, and so are you. My heart pounded as the snake surged towards me. This time I grabbed a broken stone and swung it wildly. It connected with the snake's head, and the creature let out a terrible hiss, recoiling. Anna's voice cut through the chaos. Michael, the doll, take it out. What? Now? I ripped open the backpack with trembling hands and pulled out the doll. Its beady eyes glinted in the morning light, and I could feel its cold and suffocating power seeping into my skin. The snake hissed louder, its movements growing more erratic as though the sight of the doll had enraged it. Anna stepped forward, her voice urgent. The shrine will only accept an offering of true intent. You have to choose, destroy it or let it consume you. My mind erased. The snake circled closer, its golden eyes locked on mine, while a doll seemed to pulse in my hand, its whispers louder than ever. Keep me, it begged. I'll protect you. I'll make you strong. You'll never be alone. But deep down I knew the truth. The doll was a parasite, feeding on my fear, my life. With a scream, I hurled the doll towards the altar at the heart of the shrine. The moment it hit the stone, the snake let out an ear-piercing shriek, its body convulsing violently before dissolving into a black, shadowy mist. The ground trembled beneath me, and for a moment I thought the entire shrine would collapse. But then everything fell silent. Anna approached the altar, her expression grim. It's not over, she said, her voice heavy with finality. The curse is not broken. You've angered them. They'll come for you now. Who? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She turned to me, her eyes filled with pity and fear. The ones who made it, and they don't forgive. The snake's revenge. As Anna and I entered the door, the hostel felt colder than I remembered. Maybe it was the weight of everything that had happened, or perhaps it was something else entirely. Either way, it made the sight of Charlie in the common room even more jarring. Charlie, I blurted, my voice louder than I intended. Relief and surprise mingled in my chest, but a part of me couldn't shake the sinking feeling that his being here might complicate things. Charlie stood, his face lined with worry. Mike, what the hell's going on? Your messages were, I don't know, man, cryptic. I thought you were losing it. Anna hovered near the doorway, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the room, as if she expected the walls to attack us. She said nothing, but the tension radiated off her. That was enough to set me on edge. Charlie, this is Anna, I said, trying to inject some normality into the situation. She's been helping me figure this out. Charlie glanced at her, his expression cautious. Right, sure, helping? Anna didn't acknowledge him beyond a curt nod. I could feel the awkward silence stretching between them like a taut wire. I cleared my throat. Listen, it's a long story, but the short version is, There's a curse tied to this doll I brought. We're trying to break it. A curse? Seriously? Charlie's sceptical tone wasn't surprising. He'd always been the practical one who needed proof before believing anything. Before I explained further, a faint hiss cut through the room. It was so quiet that I thought I might have imagined it, but Anna's sharp breath told me otherwise. "It's here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My stomach twisted. The snake. Charlie looked between us, confused and concerned, etched on his face. Snake? What snake? Anna didn't answer. She grabbed my arm, her fingers like a vice. "We need to leave. Now." We barely made it to the street when it appeared. The snake moved like a liquid shadow, its black body glinting faintly under the sunlight. But this time its eyes glowed an unnatural green, pulsating like twin beacons of malice. "Is this the snake you're talking about?" Charlie asked, his voice raising in disbelief. "It's more than a snake," Anna muttered. The creature lunged, not at me or Anna, but straight for Charlie. Before he could react, it coiled around his feet, its body dissolving into a swirling mist that climbed up his legs. "Charlie!" I shouted, lunging towards him, but Anna held me back. "Don't touch him," she hissed. The mist thickened, curling around Charlie like smoke. His eyes went wide, and then, in an instant, he was gone. "What just happened?" I spun to face Anna, panic clawing at my chest. "It's separating us," she said, her tone flat but grim. "The snake feeds on isolation. It will pick us off one by one if it can." "We have to find him," I said, already moving towards where Charlie had stood. Anna hesitated. "If we don't find him quickly, it will consume him." "What does that mean?" "It means he'll be lost to us, to himself, forever." Charlie's scream echoed faintly, drawing us towards the ruins at the edge of the hostel grounds. The air felt heavier here, the shadows darker. "Charlie," I called, my voice echoing in the emptiness. Anna moved beside me, her steps careful and deliberate. "Stay close. The snake can create illusions. If we lose sight of each other..." She didn't finish, but the implication was clear. We found him near a crumbled wall, standing eerily still. His back was to us, and for a moment I thought we were too late. "Charlie," I ran to him, grabbing his shoulders. "Hey, wake up." He blinked slowly, his focus gradually returning. "Mike, I saw them. The doll's victims. It's worse than you think." "What did you see?" I asked, my throat dry. "Fears, screams, a girl with the doll, a man losing his mind." It's evil, Mike." Anna stepped closer, her voice steady but low. "The curse thrives on fear. The more you give it, the stronger it becomes." A hiss echoed behind us, louder this time, closer. Anna pulled a blade from her pocket, the sharp glint of steel catching the dim light. "We're not safe yet," she said. "Stay together. This isn't over." The three of us stood in silence, the thick air pressing down as the sound of the snake slithered closer. The snake's trap. "Where is it?" Charlie whispered, his voice barely audible. Anna's grip on her blade tightened. "Everywhere," she muttered, "and nowhere." The weight of her words settled heavy on me. It wasn't just a snake, but something far worse, ancient and wicked. The three of us moved slowly, staying closer together as we returned to the hostel. The early morning light was weak, barely cutting through the gloom that seemed to cling to everything. Each step felt like wading through quicksand, and the dread grew with every passing second. By the time we reached the hostel, the sound of the snake had faded, but the feeling of being watched hadn't. We slipped inside, locking the door behind us. Charlie dropped onto the nearest chair, running a hand through his hair. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "First it's a cursed doll, now it's like some demon snake. This is insane." "Keep your voice down," Anna snapped, glaring at him. "It can hear us. It always listens." Charlie threw up his hands. "Great. Fantastic. So what are we supposed to do? Just wait around for it to kill us?" "No," Anna said firmly. "We fight." Her words hung in the air, heavy with determination, but Charlie didn't look convinced. "You don't understand," he said, shaking his head. "This thing, it's not just after you two anymore, it's after all of us." I sat down across from him, trying to steady my breathing. "We know," I said quietly. "That's why we have to stick together. If we split up, it will pick us off individually." Charlie's eyes flickered to Anna. "And what about her? What aren't you telling me? Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot I don't know." Anna leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. "You don't need to know everything. All you need to know is that if we don't stop this thing, it will kill us all. End of story." The tension in the room was thick as we tried to regroup. Anna started sharpening her blade again, the metallic scrape filling the silence. Charlie fidgeted nervously, glancing at the window every few seconds, as if expecting the snake to burst through at any moment. Then we heard a faint hissing sound, just outside the door. Anna froze, her eyes narrowing. "It's here," she whispered. Before we could react, the lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. The hissing was gone when they came back on, replaced by an eerie silence. The doll was sitting on my bedside dresser. "The snake's testing us," Anna said, her voice low, "trying to scare us into a mistake." "Well, it's working," Charlie muttered, his knuckles white as he gripped the table's edge. We stayed in the hostel most of the morning, waiting for the snake to make its next move and seeing what the god-forsaken doll would do. The hours dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Finally, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Anna stood abruptly. "We can't stay here," she said. "It's too dangerous. We need to find a way to end this." Charlie looked at her like she was crazy. "End this? How? It's a freaking demon snake. What are we supposed to do? We can't ask it nicely to go away." Anna ignored him, turning to me instead. "The ruins," she said. "That's where it's strongest. If we can draw it out there, we might have a chance to destroy it." I nodded, though my stomach churned at the thought. "Let's do it." Charlie groaned, rubbing his temples. "You're both insane, but fine. I'm in if this is the only way to get out of this alive. Tell me what to do." Shoving the doll back into my backpack, we left the hostel shortly after. The feeling of being watched followed us every step of the way. As we made our way towards the ruins, the hissing sound began again, louder and more persistent this time. "It knows what we're doing," Anna said, her grip on the blade tightening. "Stay close. Don't let it separate us." But the snake had other plans. It struck from the shadows, a blur of movement that sent Charlie stumbling back with a cry of pain. "It bit me," he gasped, clutching his arm. Anna was at his side in an instant, examining the wound. "It's a warning," she said grimly. "It didn't inject venom. Not yet." "What do you mean, not yet?" Charlie asked, his voice rising. "It's toying with us," Anna said darkly. "It wants to break us up before it finishes the job." The final revelation. The ruins loomed ahead, their jagged stones clawing at the overcast sky. The air felt heavier, pressing down on us, as if the land resented our presence. The snake's hissing was relentless now, echoing off the crumbling walls. "Almost there," Anna said, her voice tight with resolve. She stayed ahead, her blade glinting in the dim light, cutting through the thick atmosphere as much as through the vines that blocked our path. Charlie stumbled beside me, pale and sweating. The snake bite hadn't slowed him down physically, but something in his eyes told me that it had done damage to his psyche. "Anna, are you sure this is the place?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She glanced back at me, her expression unreadable. "This is it. The heart of the curse. If we destroy the doll here, we can end this." The doll's malevolent presence hung heavy in my pack, radiating an unnatural heat. I questioned nothing now, knowing my sanity was hanging by a thread. Every step towards the ruins made it feel heavier, as if it didn't want to be brought there. We reached the centre of the ruins, a circular clearing surrounded by crumbling pillars. In the middle, a stone altar stood, weathered but threatening, its surface carved with symbols I couldn't begin to understand. "This is where it ends," Anna said, stepping towards the altar. The snake appeared then, slithering out of the shadows with terrifying speed. Its scales shimmered unnaturally and its eyes glowed with a wicked light. It didn't strike immediately but coiled around the clearing, its hissing echoing like a chant. "Place the doll on the altar," Anna commanded, her voice firm. I hesitated. Something about her tone sent a chill down my spine. "Do it, Michael," she snapped, eyes locking onto mine. I reached into my bag, the doll's heat burning against my hand as I pulled it out. Its empty eyes seemed to glare at me, mocking me for my fear. Before I could place it on the altar, Charlie grabbed my arm. "Wait," he said, his voice trembling. "Something's not right." Anna turned to him, her expression darkening. "You don't understand what's at stake here. This is the only way to end it." But Charlie didn't let go of me. "Why are you so eager to destroy it?" he demanded, his voice rising. "You said this curse was your punishment, Anna. What aren't you telling us?" The snake hissed louder, its coils tightening as if preparing to strike. Anna's expression shifted, her calm facade cracking. "Because I was the one who created it," she admitted, her voice low but filled with venom. The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" I whispered, my mind struggling to process what she had just said. "I was desperate," Anna continued, her voice hollow. "Years ago I made a pact. The doll was supposed to protect me, to give me power. But it became something else, something I couldn't control." Charlie stared at her in disbelief. "You're the reason for all of this? The deaths, the curse, the snake?" Anna didn't deny it. "I've been trying to fix it ever since. That's why I need the doll destroyed. Because I am its maker, I cannot do that. If we don't end this now, it will never stop." The snake lunged then, its massive body crashing into the altar. The ground shook and I stumbled back, clutching the doll. "Michael, put it on the altar," Anna screamed. But I couldn't move. My mind was racing, every instinct screaming at me not to trust her. "What happens if we destroy it?" I asked, my voice shaking. Anna's face twisted with frustration. "The curse will be broken. The snake will die. I'll finally be free." "Free?" The way she said it sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "What about us?" Charlie asked. Anna hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough. "This isn't just about breaking the curse, is it?" I said, my voice low. "If I destroy the doll, you're the one who benefits, not us." The snake struck again, narrowly missing Anna as she dodged. "There is no time," she shouted. "Do it now, or we all die." I looked at Charlie, and then at the doll in my hands. "Michael, don't," Charlie screamed, his voice desperate. "There's another way, there has to be." Anna lunged at me, her blade flashing. "You don't understand. I need that doll destroyed." But before she could reach me, the snake struck her, its fangs sinking into her shoulder. She screamed, dropping her weapon as the venom took hold. The snake turned its glowing eyes towards me, coiling tighter around the altar. "Michael," Anna gasped, her voice weak. "Please, finish it." I took a deep breath, the weight of the doll burning in my hands. The altar seemed to pulsate with energy, beckoning me to place it down. But instead I turned to the snake. "You want this, don't you?" I said, holding the doll out. The snake hissed, its eyes locking into the cursed object. "Then take it," I said, throwing the doll into the air. The snake lunged, swallowing the doll whole. For a moment everything went still. Then the ruins erupted with light. The snake withered, its body contorting as the curse consumed it from within. Anna collapsed to the ground, her body convulsing, as if she were connected to the creature. "Michael, what's happening?" Charlie shouted, shielding his eyes. "I don't know," I yelled back, the light blinding us both. When it finally faded, the snake was gone. Anna lay motionless on the ground, her face pale and lifeless. She's dead," Charlie said, his voice trembling. But as I stepped closer, her eyes snapped open. They weren't her eyes anymore. They glowed with the same malevolent light as the snake's. The curse hadn't ended. It had just found a new host.